Peace, everyone. Welcome to 27th Letters Podcast. My name is Lanray Onigbindebe. Today, we have a special guest. Depending what age group you're in, depending what you know about the quote-unquote Canadian hip-hop scene, you know. I use quote-unquote when I use the word Canada all the time.
Do you?
Because, you know, it's kind of new. So I like to use ancient words, you know, Morocco and stuff like that.
Okay.
You know. But so anyways, you know, he's part of the pioneers of this scene, you know, Mr. Danny O, and
Yes, sir.
one of the biggest tracks out of I don't want to say Canadian hip hop, but in hip hop general, if you're a hip hop head, I'm pretty sure you'd appreciate this song, Dear Hip Hop. Look it up. You know, it's I would compare it to Common's I Used to Love Her.
Respect, man.
You know, straight. You know,
Respect, brother. Well, I've heard that comparison too,
Yeah.
which is actually kind of an interesting part of the story of that song is that I wrote it in '94, and I Used to Love Her came out in '94, and I remember when I Used to Love Her, when it dropped, I remember thinking, oh shit, I hope people don't think
you bite it.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
But you know what it was though? It was the essence and what was in the air at that point. Mm-hmm. Like it was just so you guys.
You're right.
It's a hip hop connection.
You're right.
Like no idea is original, really and truly. Sometimes I wonder how some people just don't like verses. Like there's got to be a verse that matches somebody else's verse out there. You know what I mean? Like it must have
like
happened.
lines too.
Lines
Sometimes you hear lines and it's like someone said something like that.
So.
Yeah, you're right. There's bound to be some like overlap, but I think you're right too. In the early '90s, I think that was the beginning of hip hop starting to defend itself. Meaning like hip hop was slowly but surely coming out of the '80s and into the '90s and becoming part of the mainstream. And so mainstream artists like Vanilla Ice and MC Hammer were starting to become like well recognized on radio and on television, and they were winning Grammy Awards and platinum records. And people who loved hip hop music were looking at it going, hold on, we've always been fighting to get this recognition that hip hop is a viable art form, it's a culture, and it's also a music genre that deserves respect, but not this stuff. This MC Hammer Vanilla Ice stuff, that's not the hip hop we wanted to blow up. So I think the early '90s was really the true beginnings of there being a distinction between, to use your quote unquote, real hip hop and whatever wasn't considered real. And so I think I Used to Love Her. The argument still continues, but I think I Used to Love Her and Dear Hip Hop and other songs like that in the early '90s were born out of that hip hop standing up for itself, the culture coming into the music.
Well, if we're going to look at her as hip hop as a woman, is basically she was trying to be she was getting wooed by diamonds. Well, and you know even the Roots. Remember what they do? What they do that
absolutely.
video. Biggie wasn't too happy with that. Puffy and Jeru, you're playing yourself. So there was a whole
lot of that going on. Yeah, I just wanted to say this though, is that was actually one of the things that I was glad about, is that Common, personalized hip hop as a female, and then made a reveal at the end of the song. And I was looking at hip hop like my boy, so thankfully that was a nice distinction between the two tracks. And I was writing a letter.
And that's the thing, a female could be your boy. We've had females who are
that's
boys.
true. That's true. That's true as well.
Growing up from our era, we had a lot of tomboys. You know what I mean?
Well, I just looked at it like hip hop because I was 17 years old, man, and when I heard the beat, shout out to my man Scam who produced this unbelievable beat, looping the pianos from The Look of Love. I thought it needed to be like a love song, like a love letter. That's how I always, when I hear a beat, I always think the beat is what gives me the concept. But at 17, I wasn't really ready to like write a love song. Like I wasn't in love yet. I didn't know which girl. So it turned into, well, I love hip hop, so let me do. But I never felt like my love for hip hop was like romantic in that way. You know what I'm saying? So it was more like, okay, my boy, and I'm kind of cheesed because there's things going on with it. So that's where it came from.
Perspective is God. So that was your perspective.
Exactly.
Had his perspective, but it all still aligns the same because it's the essence of saying, you know what, I love you. You know, you mean this much to me.
Sure.
And the same thing, hip hop's just been a big thing. When I went to prison, music was just something I had to hold on to.
I can imagine, for real, yeah.
So, but let's start. So who's your mother?
Who's my mother?
Yeah.
It's funny because I respect the question, but it almost sounds like a disrespecting. Like, anytime you bring up a man's mom, who's your mother?
No.
Nah,
No, but
all jokes aside.
No, but I tell the people like.
No, I know that. I know that
that's-
about
that's-
how you do your interviews.
Yeah. So,
But my mother, you know what? It's respect because, like, I don't think I've ever been asked that in an interview. My mother's my best friend, man. My mother is a wonderful woman from Kingston, Jamaica, named Sonia Bogle. Sonia Faraldo is her name now, of course, after getting married to my father. And why I say she's my best friend is that I think I grew up having a mom who I could always confide in and talk to. I never felt, for the most part, that I needed to hide anything from my mom. And,
looking back and you being a father now,
yeah.
What did she do to make you feel that way?
Well, I think I can't really speak for other people, but I do notice that sometimes when people have these tumultuous relationships with their parents, man, they kind of think about high school and how some people get themselves into craziness or start going with
times.
because and some people they have parents that are so strict that they can't communicate with them. They don't want to tell them anything. And then some people have parents that are so lax that they can get away with anything. My parents, I would say both of them were, and they were different personalities, but was a good combination of they get in my ass when they needed to, but I felt like I could talk to my mom about stuff. So even it could be girl problems or something or whatever was going on, I feel like I could come to her and and we would catch a lot of jokes. So I carry a certain personality where I'm very clown-like around the house.
Your mom is a yardie, so I could
imagine.
I could imagine.
And another thing too is, but it's funny though because she won't admit it. She'll ask me how you talking like that? Where you get that from? I'm like, no, I got my accent from you, and she refuses to believe that she speaks patois. But in many other instances,
broken English.
That's what she says. But she says she don't speak it. But my mom is also very kind-hearted. She's generous. She's loving, and I think these are the things that I would like to say seeped into my personality because of my upbringing, and certainly in the way that I father my daughter is with tons of love and support for whoever she is as a person.
So she was born in Jamaica and migrated here.
Yeah.
Where did they meet?
Here in Canada, in Toronto.
So she came here and then met your dad.
Yeah, my dad was late 60s to my knowledge, and my mom was early 70s in terms of when they came to Canada. Okay. And apparently, they
was
met
that
at
a long process of courting each other? How they met?
Interesting, you should ask, man. They apparently knew each other for 6 months. My dad apparently, the story goes that he saw her at a party, and the way he used to tell the story was he's looking for a so-called normal girl because he was dating different chicks and said they were all, for whatever reason, kind of carrying on a certain way. One was rude to her mother, and he didn't like that, and another one kind of acted crazy and stalked her, showing up at his house.
He knew what he wanted.
Well, he wanted what he considered normal, which wasn't he said these girls were kind of crazy. So he saw my mom at a party.
His normal.
His version of whatever that was.
Yeah.
But and he didn't talk to her at the party, and so I think it was several parties later where he was like, "Oh, I'm determined now." And apparently he walked her home, and right up to my mom's apartment door, and just started talking, and she was like, "I'm not letting this dude in." And he kept talking. So it's kind of a funny story because my dad was known to be talkative. I'm known to be talkative. But at the end of the day, as my mom would like to tell the story, she's like, I don't know who this guy is. I wasn't going to let him in. But he must have said something right because 6 months later they were married. So that's how that went down.
I respect that.
Yeah, I respect it too. He used to tell that story like he found the person he wanted, and
That's from your dad's perspective when he said he was looking for that. He knew what he wanted. He knew what he wanted. So,
well, what I respect about the story too is that he like I said, he mentioned a girl who was rude to her mother. He was not about that. Show respect to your mom
because he's thinking ahead.
Right.
He's thinking.
The other one he said was stalking him. He showed up at the house unannounced and things. So I get there's certain things that
and knowing your mom, you're glad it's your mom.
For sure. He made the right choice, no question.
That's good. That's
absolutely,
good.
Man.
So when did you come about? Were you the firstborn?
I was the firstborn. I have a brother 3 years younger than me. I'm born in 77, him in 80.
Okay.
So that was 2 years after they got married. Okay. And they sort of did things almost in, I guess what you would argue is the traditional way, man. Married, kids within 2 years, bought a house. One thing I can tell you about my family is while we weren't rich, we were never without. My dad definitely did for our family. Both my parents did for our family.